GJ. Welcome to Person, Place, and Thing, everyone, where we discuss a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. We are on the road to be featured. We were approved, so we do have to follow featured rules, which is no drinking, no smoking, no cussing, and no nudity. We do have a guest today. If she wants to request the box, I'll let her introduce herself. Welcome, Lux.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, by the way.
It's good to meet you too. So you're kind of going to be in and out of the box.
Okay.
Um, I'll tell the story and then I'll invite you back in and then we'll kind of discuss what you think about it and then we'll go over some fun facts and tidbits.
That sounds
Um,
fantastic.
we will be doing quote of the week throughout the show, somewhere in the
Okay.
middle. At the end, we'll be doing honorable mentions. So just different things that happened this week in history that I thought were kind of cool, but maybe they were too dark or um, there wasn't enough information, but it's still kind of cool. So we'll do that. So I'll go ahead and have you jump out of the box. Thank you so much for coming, Lux. I'm excited to have
Yay, thanks for
you.
having me.
So our person today is going to be George Pullman. So George Pullman, he was born on March 3rd of 1831. And he was an American engineer and an industrialist. He designed and manufactured the Pullman sleeping car and founded the company town Pullman. And the company town was essentially like a little village that was designated for the workers that worked at on the sleeper cars. And his company hired a lot of African American men to staff the Pullman cars, and it became known and widely respected as Pullman porters, and it provided them like an elite status. So these were all African Americans, well, not all of them, but most of them were formerly slaves, and then Pullman employed them, and it was a highly respected job. Um, Pullman developed the first railroad sleeper car, the Pullman Sleeper or the Palace car, in 1864. They were designed after the packet boats that traveled the Erie Canal of his youth. And then, so he introduced his first hotels on wheels, the President, a sleeper car with an attached kitchen and a dining car. And the food, like it rivaled like the finest hotels and the finest diners, and they had the best staff. They were very tentative. Um, so he hired African American freedmen because he felt that they knew how to facilitate that high quality customer care. Um, in 1880, Pullman bought 4,000 acres near Lake Willamette, which is 14 miles south of Chicago on the Illinois Central Railroad, for $800,000. This was back in 1880, so that was a lot of freaking money. He hired Salon Spencer Beeman to design his new plant there. And he was trying to solve the issue of unrest and poverty. So he built this town, and it was adjacent to his factory. It featured housing, shopping areas, churches, theaters, parks, hotels, libraries for his factory employees. The original 1,300 structures were all designed by Berman. The centerpiece of the complex was an administration building and a man-made lake. And the Hotel Florence, named for Pullman's daughter, was built nearby. Um, Pullman believed that the country air and fine facilities without alligator saloons and city vice districts would result in happy and loyal workforce. Um, the model planned community became leading attraction for visitors who attended the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. So in 1894, the manufacturing demand fell off, and Pullman cut jobs and he cut wages. He increased working hours, but he would not lower the costs of his plant, um, and he would keep the profits. Um, so all of these people, a lot of them got laid off. They cut their wages, but they refused to cut like the cost of rent and the cost of food and everything in this town. So essentially, he would take it right out of their checks, right? He would give them two checks. One of them would be equivalent to the rent that they owed, and then the other one would be whatever was left over. So, for example, there were people that would make like $900.04, right? And say their rent was $900. He would keep, he would write him a check for $900 and then one for the 4 cents, so that they had to choose, like, you have to pay your rent or you have to eat. And he would evict them within days if they chose to keep their rent checks. And so this actually started um, a a protest, if you will. Um, it actually started the hang on, I had it right in here, just a minute. It started a strike that it stopped the mail. So everybody was okay with the strike. They essentially kept the trains from moving. They kept them there because of the way that these mail, like through like piece of mail, like federal mail, like, yeah, like mail, but it was by train. And so the president had to actually send in troops to let them get the mail through. But the problem was that there was mail intertwined in a whole bunch of different trains. It wasn't like there was one train, it was everywhere. And so after like back and forth, on June 26th, all Pullman cars were cut from the trains. Um, and then union members were fired. And entire rail lanes were shut down, and Chicago was besieged. One consequence was about the federal mail, and violence broke out between rioters and federal troops that were sent to protect the mail. And then July 34th, or in July, by the end of July, 34 people had been killed. The strikers were dispersed, the troops were gone, and all courts had sided with the railway owners, and Debs was in jail for contempt of court. So they stopped the mail, and because violence ensued because of the strike, um, the person that organized it, who was Debs, actually went to jail for that, um, for disrupting the mail. And at that point, Pullman's reputation was soiled by the strike, and in 1894, in an effort to conciliate organized labor after the strike, President Grover Cleveland and Congress designated Labor Day as a federal holiday. So I think it's crazy that a strike actually kind of played a part in what we know today as Labor Day. Um, the holiday was pushed through Congress, and then 6 days after that, the strike ended. In 1896, George Pullman died of a heart attack at the age of 66, only 3 years after the strike. In his will, Pullman bequeathed 1.2 million to establish the Pullman Free School of Manual Training for the children of employees of the Pullman Palace Car Company and the residents of the neighboring Roseland community. In 1950, the George M. Pullman Education Foundation succeeded the Pullman Free School of Manual Training, also known as Pullman Tech, after it closed in 1949. The city of Pullman, Washington, was named in his honor. So that, it seems to me like this guy, George Pullman, he meant well in the beginning, but I think that as demand fell, he just didn't know how to keep up with that, because he did have a promise to his investors for that town for 6%. He would give them 6% regardless. So it was almost like he couldn't cut the wages, but I think that he meant well. Lux, if you want to request the box, that is the end of the story of George Pullman. I do have some fun facts. Did you already request the box?
Hi.
Hi, Lux. What do you think about George Pullman?
I think it was interesting. There was a lot more to that story that I think sort of pops up when you initially look up George Pullman.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really cool, like the behind the story about George Pullman. So I did a
Yeah.
little bit of research in my time. I do have a toddler, so every time I do something, there's a hey mom, which is fun. So I found you can go visit his grave, so you
Hmm.
can go see the monument there, which is interesting. If you want to go to the Graceland Cemetery in Chicago, you can go see his monument.
Yeah, and his family was so scared that some of the employees or the family for the employees would be like vengeful and go and steal his body. So that's why they encased him in concrete and then put the
Wow.
monument over top of him, is because they were so worried that there was going to be angry former employees that were going to vandalize everything.
Wow, wow. Yeah, and that's so interesting. And it's definitely not something that, pops up right away when you look for like the encyclopedia or whatever, George Pullman
Yeah.
and things. And I Googled it a couple times too, and just the initial things that pop up really, of course, uh, put him in a good light there.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, he did do some shady things, but I think his initial intentions were good. I think it just
Yes.
got out of control.
Right,
Um
right.
so some fun facts that I have is that the Pullman served as the epicenter for one of the largest strikes known in history. And during the Panic of 1893, a serious economic depression that began in that year, the Pullman Palace car laid off hundreds of workers and cut wages. However, George Pullman still paid dividends to the shareholders and charged the employees rent. These actions angered the employees and triggered the Pullman strike of 1894. The strike escalated to a national level when it interrupted the delivery of the U.S. mail. So it seems like when you talk about the strike, the biggest problem that they had almost wasn't even that these people were being treated so poorly, it's that they weren't getting their mail. Which is
Right, right.
important. Mail is important, but I see a lot about how the mail was interrupted. The mail was interrupted. Not a lot about how these people were starving because this man wouldn't negotiate.
Right. Right, exactly.
Um, George Pullman was the third of 10 children, so he had 9 siblings.
Wow.
And the labor force that Pullman Palace car, like he went from 5,500 to 3,300. That's how many people he laid off. And then he cut the average pay 25% per employee. And they were based on piecework.
Wow.
And as the dispute spread, over 100,000 employees working on 24 railroads centering at Chicago were involved in the strike. So I think that's what they mean when they say that it was one of the biggest known strikes in history, is because there was over 100,000 people that joined this strike. And there was, during the violent disputes, there was 12 people that were shot.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's wild to me. It's crazy. Um, so, just a quick shout out to everybody coming in. This is Person, Place, and Thing, where we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. This is my beautiful co host, Lux.
Hi.
She's telling me her different thoughts and opinions and ideas and any other information that she might have to add to any of these topics that we have. I'll go ahead and have you jump out of the box now,
Okay.
and we're going to get started on our place, which is Boston, Massachusetts. Do you guys know what happened in Boston, Massachusetts? The start of the Revolutionary War happened in Boston, Massachusetts with the Boston Massacre. It was a confrontation on March 5th, 1770, in which a group of 9 British soldiers shot at 5 people of a crowd of 300 or 400 who were harassing them verbally and throwing various projectiles. It was heavily publicized as a massacre by leading patriots such as Paul Revere and Samuel Adams. The British troops had been stationed in the province of Massachusetts Bay since 1768 in order to support Crown appointed officials and to enforce unpopular parliamentary legislation. So, amid the tension between the civilians and the soldiers, there was a mob that formed around what I think they called it the town. It was like the official building that the like the embassy is kind of what you could relate it to. But there were British soldiers out there, and then a mob of civilians kind of started gathering around these soldiers, and they started screaming at them and like were very verbally abusive. Um, and it started with just one soldier, but eventually I think 8 more soldiers. Let me see. Yeah, 8 more soldiers, 7 more soldiers came to support this one soldier. And Thomas Preston, it was the soldiers were led by Thomas Preston. And what happened is somebody in the crowd hit one of the soldiers with a club, and that person ended up shooting into the crowd. And it's widely speculated that the captain had yelled fire, or that he had yelled, "Why are you firing?" um, so that's kind of, nobody really knows what exactly was said, but they they needed to know like how it went so that they could prosecute. Does that make sense? So that was like the center of a huge controversy with it, is because they don't know if the captain said fire or why did you fire. Yeah. So what had happened is 2 people were killed. No, 3 people were killed instantly, and a total of 8 others were wounded, and 2 of them died later. The crowd eventually dispersed after acting Governor Thomas Hitchinson promised an inquiry, but reformed the next day, prompting the withdrawal of the troops to Castle Island. So, 8 soldiers, 1 officer, and 4 civilians were arrested and charged with murder, and they were defended by future U.S. President John Adams. And I watched a documentary about this, and it said that he had offered to represent these people to make sure that they got a fair trial, so that there could be nothing that came back that could like acquit them or make it so that justice was not served. So he opted to make sure that they got really good court counsel, so that everything was ensured to be the way that it's supposed to be. And 6 of the soldiers were acquitted, and the other 2 were convicted of manslaughter and given reduced sentences. Yeah, like double jeopardy. The 2 found guilty of manslaughter were sentenced to branding on their hand. Um, so that to me is, I don't know how I feel about that, because it's, if we look at police brutality today, that would never have been accepted. But we also would look at the fact that this soldier was physically attacked with a club. So I don't know. I don't really know how to depict that in my mind. I do know that this started the Revolutionary War. Um, and it was also, this is where the first African American um, had died at the start of the Revolutionary War. It was Cypress. His last name was Cypress. I'm trying to see if I can find his first name. Yeah, yeah. It was a thing. Let me see. Crispius Atticus, and he was a I think he was a slave. I'm not 100% sure. They didn't. I couldn't find a whole bunch of information about him, and I was trying to keep it about the Boston Massacre. So I had fun facts, but I just accidentally deleted them. So um, I don't have my fun facts for this one. I'm sorry about that. But Lux, if you want to jump in the box, welcome to Person, Place, and Thing for those that are just showing up, where we discuss a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. This is my guest, the beautiful Lux, and she's going to
Hi.
tell what she thinks about the Boston Massacre.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I got you for some fun facts. Not about the Boston Massacre,
Yes,
because that's kind of an oxymoron, fun facts, Boston Massacre.
I
But I
agree.
did
I
find
agree.
some fun facts about Boston. Um,
Perfect.
because I don't know much about Boston to begin with. I'm a Canadian, so not to say we shouldn't learn about the rest of the places, but so I just Googled Boston in general, and I was like, what's up with Boston? And when I think of Boston, I think of the Boston Tea Party immediately. So that was my go-to. So all of that was quite informative. I do thank you for that. So
You're welcome.
I, in regards to the revolution, though, I did find that Boston has the oldest public park, um, which dates back to 1634, where the colonial militia mustered for the revolution. So that's very exciting.
Oh,
So
that is
you can
cool.
visit that park, right, if you like. Um, in not regards to the revolution or any massacres, Boston is the home of the Fig Newton. So the Fig Newton is named
That's
after
awesome too.
A Boston suburb. So there you go. Have a Fig Newton. Um, it is also home to the biggest burglary in the world. So if you go to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, it has 13 empty frames. In 1990, thieves posing as officers cut the paintings out directly from the frames. And they're still empty because Gardner insisted before she died that nothing in the museum be rearranged. So you can go visit these empty frames at that museum if you like.
that's dark. So March, I had a hard time this week finding light-hearted topics because March is a dark, dark month in history. I didn't realize how
Yes.
dark it was. But we can talk about this week's quote if you like.
Mm-hmm. Good
So
idea.
the quote of the week is from Franklin D. Roosevelt, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, on March 4th, his first inaugural speech. The quote, "Let me assert my firm beliefs that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself."
That's what's up.
I thought that one was perfect.
That is.
Because
That's great. I love it.
I've recently learned that fear can be your greatest downfall. If you let it, it'll hold you back from everything.
Yes, right? Exactly. We need it because it stops us from doing things that are dangerous, but we also can't let it hold us back,
Yeah,
right?
definitely, definitely. So we'll go ahead and get on to this week's thing, if you'd like.
Right?
This was actually quite. You can go ahead and jump out of the box if you want to, Lux.
Okay, I
I'll
was like,
let
do
you
I
go
go now?
first.
Okay, right now, thanks. You're great.
Um, so I didn't realize this thing had so much controversy behind it, because it seems like such a really innocent thing. This week's thing is actually the hula hoop. Um, so on March 5th, 1963, the hula hoop received its patent in the United States. Um, if you don't know, the hula hoop is a hip swiveling toy that became a huge fad across America when it was first marketed by Whammo in 1958. It's patented by the company's co-founder Arthur Spud Mellon. An estimated 25 million hula hoops were sold in its first 4 months of production alone. In 1948, friends Arthur Mellon and Richard Nur founded a company in California to sell a slingshot they created to shoot meat up to falcons they used for hunting. The company's name, Whammo, came from the sound the slingshot supposedly made when they would shoot them. Whammo eventually branched out from slingshots and started selling things like boomerangs and other sporting goods. Its first hit toy was a flying plastic disc known as the Frisbee, and it debuted in 1957. The Frisbee was originally marketed under a different name. The Pluto Platter is what the Frisbee was originally called, and it was in an effort to capitalize on America's fascination with UFOs. Melina and Nur were inspired to develop the hula hoop after they saw a wooden hoop that Australian children twirled around their waist during gym. Whammo began producing a plastic version of the hula hoop, dubbed the hula hoop because of the way that hula dancers move their hips and the way that the hula would mock how you had to move your hips to hula hoop. Um, and almost immediately when the hula hoop came out, it took off. The hula hoop mania just spread in popularity. But it was short lived, and within a matter of months, the masses were on to the next big thing. However, the hula hoop never faded completely away, and it still has fans today. According to Ripley's Believe It or Not, in April 2004, a performer at the Big Apple Circus in Boston, again Boston, simultaneously spun 100 hoops around her body. Earlier that same year, in January, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, two people in Tokyo, Japan managed to spin the world's largest hula hoop at 13 feet 4 inches around their waist at least 3 times each. So interestingly, to the how the hula hoop became a thing in America, um, Joan Anderson has a similar story to tell. And I didn't write anything about this because I had just watched the documentary and done a couple quick searches on it. But I do know that she actually is a native to Australia. And she came to America. She got married, settled in, got her citizenship. And then she went back to Australia to visit her family. And they had a hula hoop that was made out of bamboo, and they had fun with it, they played with it, and then Joan came home. Well, she had told her husband about the hula hoop, and he had told her that she should have her family send her one to America. And so she did, and she actually took the hula hoop to Mullen, one of the people that had it patented and still was widely believed to be the creator of the hula hoop. And she actually filed a lawsuit on him because she took it to him and they agreed that she would get patent rights on a handshake. So she took the guy's word for it, shook his hand, and then he took all the credit for it. Didn't give her any royalties, didn't name her at all, nothing like that. And So her and her husband actually ended up suing Whammo companies, but because they didn't patent it, they weren't able to collect on the lawsuit. However, that letter that she sent to her family, asking them to send her a hula hoop, way before the patent was issued, that's how they actually were able to squeeze in another lawsuit, and they made enough that they were able to start their own business, and it was a pretty big business. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that's how the hula hoop came to be. And it seems like a lot of these things that I look for in here, when I look for the things, there's always some kind of scandal or controversy or somebody claiming bad doing. I have yet to find one that there's not some sort of issue around. Um, so hula hoops are still used today in dance, gym. It actually was started as in Greece. They would use like stiff, like greenery, like grasses and stuff. And then vines, they would use vines to spin around on the ground, kind of like, what do you call a skip it? It was kind of like a skip it. And then Native Americans use them in their cultural dances as well. They call them hoop dancers. So actually, technically, hula hoops have been around since I think it was 4000 BC is when they think that the oldest hula hoop, like when it was way, way, way back. And like I said, it was vines that they would make into a circle and they would wrap it around their ankle and they would like spin it and then jump over with one leg. They would spin it with one leg and then they would jump over it with the other. Have you guys seen those skip-its? I don't know if anybody here remembers the skip-it, but I love the skip-it. And if you guys haven't, then you guys should try a skip-it because that was actually the first hula hoop ever. Ever. Um, so I do have some fun facts about the hula hoop if Lux wants to go ahead and request the box. For anybody just joining, this is Person, Place, or Thing, where we go through a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me back.
You're welcome. So what do you think about the hula hoop?
We have a hula hoop. My kids I have 3 kids, so we definitely have a hula hoop. I thought about looking for it so that I could do some hula hooping, but it's too cold. I couldn't find it in the garage. So don't worry, everyone. I'm not going to do any hula hoop. I also had a skip, and I loved it. It had a counter, and I loved it.
Mine too, mine too. It definitely had a counter on it. Me and my siblings would have competitions.
Right? I love it. And I love the hula hoop. Like I love how versatile it is, how long it's been around, like how iconic it is, you know? I think of that
Yeah.
Alvin and the Chipmunks song, like the Christmas song, Me, I love my hula hoop, you know? Like
Yeah.
and the hoop dancing and like and the kids they would, the young kids they would run around with the hoop and the
Yeah.
stick and like it does so much. And I love the story of it too, like how it was discovered. And then the Whammo people found it. And apparently they made a couple for themselves, took it to a cocktail party, and then all the adults were playing with it after a few drinks, and they were like, "We have a hit!" And like, that's awesome.
That is awesome. It's, it's so crazy because a lot of people don't understand how fascinating history can be. Like take something like the hula hoop. Like I never would have thought to look
Right,
into the origins of a hula hoop. But and
right,
now if you look for like hula hooping, you're gonna find some talent. It's not about just
yes,
shaking your hips anymore. Like there is serious
right,
talent out there with dancing and tricks and um I don't know, it evolved to
right.
something different. Um so the longest recorded duration for a single hula hoop to be hooped is 74 hours and 54 minutes, a record set in Ohio by Aaron
Wow.
Hibbs in late 2009. That is, how many hours are there in 3 days?
I was just trying to calculate. So 2 days, 48,
So she
72. That's three
stayed
days,
up
like three
for
days.
3 days, 2 hours and 54 minutes hula hooping
Wow.
straight.
How was she like drinking coffee while she was? How do you do that?
Something, I don't know. According to the British Medical Journal, the hula hoop was responsible for an increase in back, neck, and abdominal injuries.
Oh, okay. Wow, right up there with the trampoline. That's wild.
Indonesia banned hula hoops because they might stimulate passion, and Japan forbade them on the public streets.
Okay, I could see that. You're like, yeah, let's go.
It might stimulate passion? What?
Well, because like that's like going back to Elvis, right? And the movements of the hips and the gyrating, right? And that was like no, right?
Oh, that's hilarious. The official news agency in China
Can I say that on a
called
feature
hula.
show?
Yeah, you can totally say that. The official news agency in China called hula hoops a nauseating craze in the Soviet Union. The hoop was seen as a symbol of emptiness in American culture.
Wow. Wow. How iconic. It was a symbol at some point. That's wild.
Empty or not. Yes. So, the record for the most hoops twirled simultaneously was 105 by Jin Lin Lin of, ironically, China in 2007.
That's interesting. Interesting. But I mean, you ban it and people aren't going to be like, okay, we don't, then they're going to take it into their, private spaces and then, use it.
Not ironic, she said.
Right, right.
Well, this is the same country that called it a symbol of emptiness in American culture. So...
Right, right. Yeah, right. Let's go. Right, right. I'm all about it.
I thought that was hilarious. I died laughing. So we're cruising right along today, and we're going to get into honorable mentions, but I do want to give a plug to my show real quick. This is Person, Place, or Thing, where we discover a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. We discovered George Pullman for our person. He invented the sleeping cars and inspired one of the largest strikes in history. And then we talked about the place, Boston, Massachusetts, where the Boston Massacre happened, which inspired the Revolutionary War. And then we talked about the hula hoop for our thing, which it really is iconic. Like, you can't...
Mm-hmm.
The hula hoop is iconic, and it's got an interesting backstory, too. So, honorable mentions, like I was saying, this month in history, it's a very, very dark month. There are some glimmers of light in there, but it a lot of really tragic things happened this month in history. So we're just going to go from Monday to Sunday, and we're going to start with March 6th of 1475. The Renaissance genius Michelangelo was born in Caprice, Italy. If you don't know who Michelangelo was, he was a painter, a sculptor, an architect, a poet, and a visionary best known for a fresco on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and his sculptures David and Paida. So I thought that was cool. And, I think when I think about sculptures, I think Michelangelo is the first one that comes to my mind. You know what I'm saying?
David, yeah, definitely.
Yep, and he was born March 6th. Tuesday,
it's my sister's birthday. That's cool.
Yeah, now you can tell her. You share a birthday with Michelangelo.
That's cool.
March 7th of 1707, Stephen Hopkins was born in Providence, Rhode Island. He was the state's colonial governor and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. So that was kind of cool too. And here's where we get kind of dark. we're going back to the first now. So Wednesday,
Okay.
March 1st of 1930, the 20-month-old son of aviation pioneer Charles A. Lindbergh was kidnapped from his home in Hopewell, New Jersey. The Lindberghs then paid a $50,000 ransom. However, on May 12th, the boy's remains were found in a wooded area a few miles from the house. That made like news. That was big news for a
Right. That's a
long
huge
time.
story. And there's still like
It was a big
controversy, isn't
story.
there? Like, the
Oh
baby
yeah.
lived, and people are like, they're still like,
Uh-huh.
I'm the Lindbergh baby.
Yeah. Definitely. um
They right,
and there is like and there really is. That was, going on 100 years ago.
right,
But still, and it's, I think that it's because it was so publicized. You know what I
right.
mean? Like
And we can
when
all
anything
identify like
makes the
something happened
news,
to our little one. Like that's, you
right.
know, when someone hurts a child, they hurt all of our
Exactly.
children, like all of
Exactly.
us.
And it helps that he was an aviation pioneer. He had the monies to make sure that his story was getting out. And then the fact that
Right,
they paid $50,000 in 1932,
wow,
that was a lot of
right.
freaking money, and still didn't get their kid back. Um, it made me sad though, because May 12th is my birthday, and that's when they found him.
Oh,
Thursday, March 2nd of 1793, American soldier and politician Sam Houston was born in Rockbridge County, Virginia. As a teenager, he ran away and joined the Cherokee Indians, who accepted him as a member of their tribe. He later served as congressman and governor of Tennessee. In 1832, he became commander of the Texan Army in the War for Texan Independence, defeating the larger Mexican army in 1836 at the Battle of San Jacinto. Then served as senator and governor of the new state of Texas, but was removed in 1861 after refusing to swear alliance to the Confederacy. That,
wow.
like, can you imagine reading that guy's story?
I was just thinking that. I'm like, my story's like this big. I was like, she did this, and then she went here, and like, but he's like this and this. Just the one part where he ran off with the Cherokee. Like then there was like a whole nother like 7 other chapters after that.
Yeah. It could be a whole series. And back then the Indians and the settlers did not get along. So for the
Right.
Cherokees to openly accept him, I think that says
Yes.
something too. And there is a lot of controversy behind all of that with the war
Right.
with the natives, and um so
And for
to
him to be
me it
accepting as well, him open to their culture as well, which was really cool because that
absolutely,
wasn't of the times either.
absolutely,
Like Dances with Wolves.
absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? Good for him for refusing to swear to something that he didn't believe in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think during something that I've noticed that seems to be timeless is people standing up for what they feel is right. Usually brings about
Yes.
some sort of change.
Right.
Standing up for what is right will always be the right thing. And it'll always be the noble thing, and it'll always be the brave thing. And that's something that I've taken notice to is standing your ground on your beliefs will 9 out of 10 times play in your favor.
Yes. Right.
Friday,
And
March.
yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was gonna say, yeah, and in terms of like people, stepping up and helping, thinking of a quote Mr. Rogers' mom said, and in terms of the dark history that we're talking about, like when you're looking in the news and things are looking, bad, always look for the helpers because there's always those like glints of light. There's always those helpers. There's always those people standing up when things
Mm-hmm.
are difficult.
I love that. So at work we actually discussed that quote just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yay! I love that. Oh, you're right on.
So, Friday, March 3rd of 1913, a women's suffrage march in Washington, D.C. was attacked by angry onlookers while police stood by. The march occurred the day before Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. Many of the 5,000 women participating were spat on and struck in the face as a near riot ensued. The Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, then ordered soldiers from Fort Mayor to restore order. So, women's suffrage, that march changed a lot of views on how women were treated, especially in the workforce. You know, we were only allotted certain jobs. We were only allotted X amount of salary, and we still
Right.
had to make sure that all of our other obligations, including our husband, were taken care of fully. And then for these women, they were just marching. They weren't hurting anybody. They weren't screaming. They
Right. It
weren't
was peaceful.
vandalizing.
Yeah.
It was peaceful, and what really really upset me is while police stood by.
Yes. Right.
That made me really mad because at the end of the day, regardless of what's right or wrong, I feel police have always been put into place to protect and serve, right?
Right. Right. And an all
How
male
is
police
that
force, of course. Right. Because we weren't. Yeah.
Yep, on an all male police force. Yep. um So that's another dark part of American history. But Saturday, March 4th of 1888, American football legend Knut Rockne was born in Voss, Norway. He coached the Notre Dame football team for 13 seasons, amassing an overall record of 105 wins, 12 losses, and 5 ties. He became famous for his locker room pep talks and the saying, "Win one for the Gipper." He was killed in an airplane crash on March 31st of 1931 in Kansas.
Oh wow. Well,
I
that's
thought
it. I
that
don't know
was
much
pretty
about
cool.
sports. Go sports, but that's really interesting.
I don't know anything about sports either, but I didn't want it all to be dark.
Right.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Right on.
And I
Right.
assumed there would be some sports fans in here that would appreciate that tidbit of information. And I don't know if this is football like we know in America or this is football like everybody else knows. Is this soccer or is this football? I don't know.
Right.
Somebody
American
that knows
football. Right.
sports, let me know.
Okay.
Okay, March 5th of 1933, amid steadily worsening economic situation, newly elected President Franklin D. Roosevelt proclaimed a 4-day bank holiday to stop panic withdrawals by the public and the possible collapse of the American banking system. I
Oh
thought
my
this was
goodness.
interesting because why didn't they do something like this with the toilet paper shortage?
Right? They just we need to stop toilet paper sales. I think it was too late by the time they realized. I think, this people have been carrying them out, and they're like, "Oh, wait, like we're
There
gonna."
was a great toilet paper shortage of 2021.
Yes, there was. One
um,
person decided that it was going to go and they needed to buy a bunch. And that was like the catalyst for everybody else buying it. So there was like none on the shelves. It was expensive. People are like selling it like black market toilet paper. Like it was wild.
yeah, yeah. And I noticed that that was one of the first times that I had ever heard of price gouging.
Right, right. Oh, same what they did with the sanitizer and like I think bottled
Hmm.
water or something. Someone,
Gloves, masks.
yes, right, yes, right. And then
Hmm.
people with
Yep.
bidets are laughing at everyone like, "Why do you need toilet paper?"
You know, the thought of a bidet is terrifying. We did a segment where one of our
Right, yours is.
things was a toilet, like the creation
Oh,
of the
okay.
toilet. And that's
Right.
fascinating too.
Yes. Thomas Crapper.
Yeah, Thomas Crapper. Yeah, exactly. So that does wrap up person, place, and thing. But I do want Lex to tell us a little bit about what she does on her stream, and then I'll share what I do. Thank you guys for coming to Person, Place, and Thing. We talked about George Pullman and the Pullman Sleepers. We talked about the Boston Massacre in Boston, Massachusetts. And then we talked about the hula hoop and all of that conspiracy and iconicness. Um, if you would like to be a guest on the show, please get a hold of Emoji J or myself, and we're going to let Lux take over now.
Yay! Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. What a great show. This is so fun. I love learning and I love talking about stuff. It's like, that's why I miss universities, because you get to go to class and you get to bounce ideas off other people, which is totally different than like reading an article and bouncing off the ideas by yourself. So thank you so much. And I'm Lux. You can find me here in the stream just about every night. I do the late show. So I'm here at about 1 a.m. Eastern. I do Tic Tac trivia every Wednesday. So that's a fun game. So you can come join me for that. It is not featured. It is not on its way to being featured. It's just a fun thing we're doing, maybe.
What is
Tic Tac trivia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So contestants take turns answering trivia questions, trying to get 3 X's or O's in a row on the board. And if they do, then they go on to the bonus round. Woo! Where they have to find, again, 3 X's or O's to win the bonus prize, but not the dragon. There's a dragon that will trip you up. So,
Oh.
So that's me.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Lux. Do you have any auctions or anything like that coming up?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. Thank you. I'm in a bunch of shows this week, so I put on my Instagram because these are so fun. But in terms of auctions, I'm going to do Good Listeners auction March 17th, so you can look for me in that. And then I'm going to be in Krabby's Winter Dare auction on the 1st of April, so that should be really fun. Thank you.
That's awesome, Lux. That's awesome. Everybody make sure that we're favoriting Lux and we show her some support. I've been to her streams a few times. I don't think that we've ever actually met, though. So it was nice to actually finally meet you.
It was nice to meet you, too.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
I'm
going to talk a little bit about, yeah, definitely. I'm going to talk a little bit about me and my stream and what I've got going on. So we in my stream created a nonprofit organization called #SOS. And what we do here is I make wooden boxes and I fill them with items that help with coping. And I document that whole process, and then I donate those boxes to different groups and organizations that have high suicide and addiction rates. And all of that is documented on my stream. I also have a website. You can get a hold of me on Instagram, where you can learn more about the nonprofit. Of course, you can get a hold of me on Snap, and I can show you more. Thank you, Lux. I do have a show coming up tomorrow with Jill with a G. It's her inspirational women's show that she's putting on. I'll be there talking about the story of how #SOS started. And then I'm on Dealing with Scantron on Wednesday with Emoji J. So make sure to step in on that. I did watch a little bit of the show, and it is intense, guys. If you guys want to come to one of my shows that I'm on, I would definitely recommend Dealing with Scantron to get your blood pumping. It's a pretty intense show. And then I also have auctions coming up on the 18th and the 19th. And that's all just to spread awareness about my cause. So I don't expect anybody to come and throw diamonds. Just come and maybe throw my emoji in the chats. That would be awesome. And with that, thank you guys so very much for coming. I had a really great time. We are shredding it a little bit short today. But yeah, we'll be back next week at 11 a.m. Tuesday, where we'll be talking about next week in history. So yeah, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And that's where we're going to end. Bye. I do got to get some running around done and get these headshots taken care of. So I'll be around. I'll be in and out of streams, and I'll come visit you too, Lux. Thank you, guys. Bye.